The night was supposed to be routine, just another shift, another patrol. But Officer Jake Reynolds had no idea that tonight, his unchecked arrogance and deep-seated prejudice would lead to the shock of his life. It started with a call, a simple traffic stop gone wrong. A young black man, barely out of his teens, stood beside his car, hands raised, fear in his eyes. But before he could explain, Reynolds was already in motion, barking orders, his hand hovering near his taser. That's when she arrived. Police Chief Monica Hayes, calm, authoritative, and completely in control. Reynolds didn't recognize her at first. Maybe it was because she wasn't in uniform. Maybe it was because he never imagined that a black woman could hold more power than him. So when she stepped forward, trying to de-escalate the situation, he saw nothing but defiance. And then, in a moment of blind rage, he did the unthinkable. He lashed out. A swift kick meant to humiliate, to put her in her place. But what happened next? That he never saw coming, because Monica Hayes wasn't just any cop, and she wasn't about to back down. For a brief second, there was silence. The kind that feels heavy, stretching time into something slow and unbearable. Officer Reynolds stood there, his boot barely touching the ground, after what he'd just done. The young man by the car froze, his breath caught in his throat, eyes darting between them. But Chief Monica Hayes, she didn't flinch. Instead, she straightened, her gaze locked onto Reynolds. And in that moment, something in his face changed. Maybe it was the realization of what he had just done. Maybe it was the way she stood there, unmoved, not giving him the reaction he expected. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Monica's presence commanded attention, even without a badge pinned to her chest. Every officer in the city knew her name. Some respected her, others resented her. But Reynolds, he had underestimated her, dismissed her, and now he was about to regret it. The air was thick with tension, and though no one had spoken yet, the weight of the moment was undeniable. Monica's eyes flickered to the young man, still scared, still unsure. But one thing was clear, this was far from over. And Reynolds had no idea what was coming next. The streetlights buzzed overhead, casting a dim glow over the tense scene. The young man shifted nervously, his hands still raised as if afraid to move. His eyes flicked to Monica, searching for some kind of reassurance. She gave him a slight nod, silent but firm. She was in control now. Reynolds, however, wasn't backing down. His jaw tightened, hands balling into fists at his sides. "You need to step back, ma'am," he said, voice edged with something between authority and uncertainty. He still hadn't fully processed what had just happened, what he had done. Monica took a slow step forward, her eyes never leaving his. "You know who I am, don't you?" she asked, her voice steady. Reynolds hesitated. Of course he knew. But admitting it, that was different. His pride, his anger, it wouldn't let him. Behind him, his partner, Officer Davis, had been watching in stunned silence. He wasn't like Reynolds. He had his own doubts about Chief Hayes, sure, but he also knew one thing. This wasn't going away quietly. Monica glanced at Davis now, measuring his reaction. Would he intervene, or would he let this play out? The moment stretched, every second thick with unspoken words, with choices yet to be made. Reynolds' fingers twitched at his side, his breath coming in short, sharp bursts. He was trying to keep control, but the situation was slipping fast. People were watching now, residents peeking from windows, a few bystanders slowing down on the sidewalk, sensing something was happening. The quiet tension of the street had shifted into something heavier, something dangerous. Monica didn't move. She didn't have to. She knew that Reynolds was fighting an internal battle, one between his pride and the reality of what he had just done. His partner, Davis, shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting from Reynolds to Monica. His silence spoke volumes. The young man by the car finally found his voice. Are we done here?" His words were cautious, but there was a challenge beneath them, a desperate need to escape whatever was about to unfold. Reynolds exhaled sharply through his nose, his jaw clenching so hard it looked painful. He knew eyes were on him. His career, his reputation, it all hung in the balance. Monica took another step closer. "Think very carefully about your next move," she said, her voice low but commanding. For the first time that night, Reynolds looked uncertain, but uncertainty could be dangerous. And in the next moment, everything exploded. Before Reynolds could react, a sharp voice cut through the tension. "That's enough." A patrol car had pulled up, its lights flashing but siren silent. Stepping out was Captain Eric Lawson, a seasoned officer known for keeping things in order. His eyes swept over the scene, the tense standoff, the fear still lingering in the young man's posture, and Monica Hayes standing firm. He had seen enough to know something was very wrong. Reynolds stiffened. If there was one person who could shut this down before it spiraled out of control, it was Lawson. But what Lawson did next caught everyone off guard. Instead of addressing Reynolds first, he turned to Monica. "Chief Hayes," he said, his tone unreadable. "What exactly is going on here?" Monica studied him carefully. Lawson wasn't a bad cop, but he was a political one. He chose his words carefully, always calculating the safest move. The real question wasn't what he saw, it was whose side he was going to take. Reynolds opened his mouth to speak, but Monica beat him to it. "An officer just assaulted his superior," she said calmly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. Lawson's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. A hesitation, a decision forming. And then, to everyone's shock, he said, "Let's take this inside." The street was no longer safe for what was about to happen next. Inside the precinct, the air was thick with tension. The walls, lined with old case files and department awards, seemed to close in as Monica, Reynolds, Davis, and Captain Lawson gathered in the conference room. The young man had been sent home, shaken but unharmed, for now. Reynolds sat stiffly, arms crossed, his face a mask of defiance. Monica stood across from him, unwavering, while Davis lingered near the door, unsure if he should even be in the room. Captain Lawson took a deep breath, then turned to Monica. "Tell me exactly what happened." Monica didn't hesitate. She laid it all out. The traffic stop, Reynolds' aggression, the moment he crossed the line. Her voice never wavered, and she never broke eye contact. Reynolds scoffed. "Oh, come on. It was nothing." "Enough," Lawson cut him off, his tone sharp. He rubbed his temple, weighing his next words carefully. Then he said something no one expected. "Reynolds, you're suspended effective immediately." Silence. Reynolds' face drained of color. "You can't be serious." But Lawson was. "There's body cam footage, witnesses. This isn't going away." Then just when Monica thought the night was over, Lawson turned to her. "But Chief, we have a bigger problem." He slid a file across the table. She opened it, and what she saw made her stomach drop. The real fight was just beginning. Monica's hands tightened around the file as she scanned the pages. It wasn't just about Reynolds. This was bigger, far bigger. Reports of misconduct, buried complaints, patterns of abuse stretching back years. And somehow it had all been kept quiet. She looked up at Lawson, who was watching her carefully. "How long have you known?" she asked, her voice steady. Lawson sighed. "I had my suspicions, but I didn't have proof until now." He gestured to the file. "This changes everything." Reynolds was still sitting there, his jaw clenched, but the fight had drained from his eyes. He knew this wasn't just about him anymore. Davis shifted uncomfortably, the weight of what he had just witnessed settling in. Monica exhaled slowly. This wasn't the victory she had expected, but it was something even more important, the start of a reckoning. She closed the file and met Lawson's gaze. "Then we fix it." For the first time that night, there was no tension, just a quiet understanding. As Monica stepped out of the room, the night air was cool against her skin. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time in a long time, change felt possible.